You are standing in a crowded train station. Hundreds of people are moving around you, and somehow you have never felt more alone. That feeling is not random. It is ancient, it is measurable, and it is happening to you right now in almost every crowd you enter. Think about the last time you were in a packed room, a concert, a busy sidewalk, a stadium full of strangers. Did you feel closer to those people or further away? Most people say further away. That is strange, isn't it? You are surrounded by more human beings than you will ever meet in your lifetime, and yet your brain registers something closer to isolation. To understand why, you have to go back further than you think. Not decades, not centuries, all the way back to the small, tight bands your ancestors lived in for almost all of human history. For most of the last 300,000 years, humans lived in groups of about 50 to 150 people. Everyone in that group knew your face. Everyone knew your name. Everyone had a rough idea of what you had contributed that week, whether you had shared meat from a hunt or watched the children while others gathered food. Your identity was not private. It was public record, held in the memory of everyone around you. That is how your brain evolved to expect a group to work. Small, known, watching. Now put that same brain in a crowd of 10,000 strangers. What happens? Your brain cannot track 10,000 faces. It was never built to, so it does something quiet and strange. It stops trying. Researchers call this deindividuation, a term first developed by social psychologist Leon Festinger in the 1950s and later expanded by Philip Zimbardo. Deindividuation is what happens when a person loses their sense of individual identity inside a large, anonymous group. Your personal accountability, the invisible thread that usually connects your actions to your reputation, gets diluted. Not because you are a different person in a crowd, because your brain calculates almost instant that no single face is watching only you. This is not a flaw. It is a survival shortcut. In a group of 150, being seen doing something selfish carried real consequences. People remembered. Food might be withheld. Trust might be lost. But your brain has no evolved mechanism for being watched by 10,000 strangers who will forget your face in seconds. So it defaults to something closer to anonymity, even when you are technically visible to everyone around you. Here is where it gets stranger. This same anonymity effect explains one of the most famous, most misunderstood phenomena in psychology, the bystander. In 1964, a young woman named Kitty Genovese was attacked near her apartment building in New York City. The story that spread afterward claimed dozens of witnesses heard her cries and did nothing. That exact account has since been challenged and partly disproven by later reporting. But the case pushed two psychologists, John Darley and Pepitone, to ask a haunting question. Why do people become less likely to help someone in danger as the number of witnesses increases? You would expect the opposite. More people should mean more help. Instead, Darley and Latane found the reverse. The more bystanders present, the less likely any single person was to step in. They called it diffusion of responsibility. When you are the only witness to someone in trouble, the entire weight of that moment sits on you. There is no one else to defer to. But surround that same emergency with 50 other witnesses and something shifts. Each person quietly assumes someone else will act. Someone more qualified, someone closer, someone already moving. The responsibility spreads so thin across the crowd that it becomes almost weightless in any one person's hands. Nobody decided to do nothing. The crowd itself made the decision without anyone choosing it. Feel that for a second. In a crowd, you are simultaneously more surrounded and less responsible than you have ever been. That combination is exactly what makes you feel invisible. Not because people cannot see you, because the group has silently agreed that no one is required to. There is a third piece to this, and it comes from a 19th century French scholar named Gustave Le Bon. In 1895, Le Bon published a study on what he called crowd psychology, arguing that individuals inside a crowd begin to think and act less like themselves and more like a single, simplified organism. Le Bon's methods were far from perfect by modern scientific standards, but his central observation has held up in later research. Crowds do not just dilute your visibility, they compress your identity. Your usual caution, your usual manners, your usual restraint, all of it can quietly thin out the moment you are folded into a large, anonymous mass of people moving in the same direction. This is why riots happen. This is why people scream things at concerts they would never say alone. This is also, on a much gentler level, why you can walk through a crowded city feeling like a ghost. Nobody is cruel to you. Nobody is unkind. They simply are not registering you as an individual because their own brains are running the same ancient shortcut yours is. Everyone in the crowd is quietly invisible to everyone else, all at the same time. Think about how differently your body behaves in a crowd versus a small group. In a small group, you make eye contact, you adjust your voice, you notice when someone goes quiet, and you ask if they are okay. None of that happens automatically in a crowd. Your senses are not built to run that kind of tracking on hundreds of people at once, so they simply stop trying. Psychologists sometimes describe this as a narrowing of social attention. The wider the crowd, the narrower your attention becomes toward any single person inside it, including yourself. You stop being an individual in your own mind, almost as much as you stop being one in everyone else's. There is a physical layer to this too. Large crowds create a kind of sensory overload, a state where your brain is processing so much movement, noise, and stimulation that it cannot afford to spend resources tracking individual faces the way it would in a quiet room. Your attention gets pulled toward the crowd as a whole, the way it might notice a flock of birds shifting direction rather than any single bird inside it. That shift from person to pattern is subtle, but it changes how connected you feel almost instantly. You start reading the crowd the way you would read weather, something to move through, not someone to meet. This also explains why cities can feel lonelier than small towns, even though cities contain far more people. Density does not create connection on its own. Your ancestors' sense of belonging came from repetition, not proximity. Seeing the same faces again and again across seasons and years is what built trust in small tribes. A city crowd resets every single day. New faces, new strangers, no repetition, no memory. Your ancient tracking system, the one built for stable, familiar group, finds almost nothing to hold on to. That absence is what you feel as loneliness, even while standing shoulder to shoulder with other human beings. Here is the twist that most people never think about. This feeling is not a malfunction. It is not loneliness in the way you usually understand loneliness. It is your evolutionary wiring correctly identifying that you are outside the size of group it was built to track. Your ancestors never stood in a stadium. They never rode a subway car packed with 100 strangers. Their brains, and now yours, simply were not designed for a world this large. But here's what should make you feel less unsettled by all of this. The same wiring that makes you invisible in a crowd of thousands makes you deeply, undeniably visible in a group of 5. Ask yourself when you last felt truly seen. It probably was not at a party with 100 guests. It was probably around a table with 3 or 4 people who knew your name, your history, your habits. That is not a coincidence. That is your brain working exactly as it evolved to. Small groups still light up the same recognition systems your ancestors relied on for hundreds of thousands of years. Nothing about modern life has broken that. It has just been buried under crowds your biology was never designed to process. There is even a name for the moment when this pattern breaks, when a crowd suddenly stops behaving like a faceless mass and starts behaving like a group of individuals again. Some researchers call it re-individuation. It usually takes very little to trick. A stranger uses your first name. Someone locks eyes with you and holds it a second too long to be accidental. A single voice cuts through the noise and says something only meant for you. In that instant, the crowd around you does not disappear, but your place inside it changes completely. You go from being one anonymous face among thousands to being, briefly, the only person in the room. That shift is not imagination. It is measurable in how people behave afterward. More likely to make eye contact, more likely to help, more likely to remember the encounter at all. So the next time you are standing in a packed room and that hollow, unseen feeling creeps in, you can name exactly what is happening. Your brain is doing math it has done for hundreds of thousands of years, correctly calculating that no single stranger in that room is tracking your face the way your ancestors' tribe once did. That is not a personal failure. It is not evidence that something is wrong with you. It is proof that your mind is still running on ancient software, built for bands of 50, dropped into a species now living in cities of millions. Understanding this will not make the crowd smaller, but it might change what you do the next time you are in one. Because if diffusion of responsibility is what makes crowds dangerous, the opposite is also true. One person choosing to act, to help, to be seen, and to see someone else can break the spell for everyone standing near them. Darley and Latane's later research confirmed this. The presence of just one person willing to step forward dramatically increases the odds that others will follow. You are not as invisible as your instincts tell you. You are only as invisible as the whole crowd silently agrees to be. And that agreement can be broken by exactly one person choosing not to make it. You are standing in a crowded train station. Hundreds of people are moving around you. This time, you know exactly why it feels like no one can see you. And for the first time, you also know how easily that could change.